Well, good evening, Facebook, and all of the people that are on tonight. For all the men that are on tonight specifically, I am your host. Welcome you to Therapy Thursdays. My name is Tia Coulter. I am the program director of the Love Movement. Love meaning leave out violence everywhere with Sisters for Sisters Inc., which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the empowerment of women and girls in mind, body, and spirit through education, personal and professional development workshops, and engaging community outreach in the areas of HIV/AIDS, sexual violence, domestic violence, girls mentoring, homelessness, and health and wellness. Tonight, we will be doing a Real Men Stand Up, Speak Up, and Show Up discussion on domestic violence, where tonight the men will take over the discussion. I am just going to be here just to monitor, but I am not speaking tonight because it is all about the men and discussion that they're going to have regarding domestic violence, because we all know that it starts and it ends with men. So I am going to welcome two men that are Brother Mark Williams and Brother Daryl Cador. Please, I'm so sorry if I'm chopping up your name, but I will also just let you introduce yourselves and tell us where you're from and what you do. And then I'm going to hand it on over to you both.
Um, yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank Carolyn White Washington and the entire Sisters for Sisters organization for having this event, having this gathering, and this platform for giving our community as a whole an opportunity to kind of speak on domestic violence, speak on the impacts that we've seen it have, particularly within our Black and our Brown communities, and to come together as one mind and one body to try to foster some added solutions. The great work that Sister for Sisters and similar organizations are doing are already on the ground and making a great impact within the communities and society as a whole. But as a society, we also want to do our part to kind of help their efforts along, to kind of work together as a community of one to try to eradicate this vice, which is domestic violence, and try to do our part to see to it that there are no victims whatsoever in this fight.
Wonderful. Brother Mark.
Yes, hello, can you hear me? Yeah, I also would like to thank Ms. Carolyn for putting on this platform for us to speak about domestic violence, because it is a growing concern, especially in the area where I'm at, Ward A, Washington, D.C. I'm noticing that a lot of people are dealing with domestic violence in my immediate community, and this is platforms and discussions like this that need to be had so people can be aware and educated about these issues.
Okay, well, I guess I'm gonna start the conversation, and then you all can move on forward. Like, I have a question so when it comes to domestic violence and men, how, in your words, how does abuse affect males?
For myself, I never experienced domestic violence, and that we all know that there's a growing number of male victims as well. It's not just a crime or an issue that affects just women. Men so are very often suffer in silence, as we know. But for myself, I've never suffered any of issues of that degree directly. But as many of us who haven't been affected directly, we've always have also been affected indirectly. And one of the things that affects me indirectly is to see how children are indirect victims of it as well, whether they're seeing mom and dad or auntie or uncle, or anyone that's close to them going through it. Is really gripping to see how it affects them. And just as a man, and I believe I can speak and Mark can share in on this as well. As a man, we just wish that those things wouldn't happen and don't happen, but yet nevertheless they do. So it's heartbreaking to see children that have to go through that, but it's just as heartbreaking to have to see anybody, any men or women going through that, and particularly women, because that's the largest demographic of victims with regard in domestic violence. So your heart does go out to people that are suffering, indirectly or directly, and it does reach a point at some point to where it does cause you kind of want to get involved some way, shape, or form. So I think that's the good that can come out of it, is that most people don't want to sit back and just close their eyes and pretend like it's not happening. In some manner, some shape or form, they want to get involved, and any matter of involvement, be it great or small, is always welcome.
Yeah, I myself haven't been directly affected by abuse. I've never been a perpetrator or a victim of it as a male, but I do know many men who has been victims of abuse and the abusers themselves. And for the victims, I kind of find that the guys are afraid to speak up because of they fear being ridiculed or being laughed at and not being taken seriously because the stigma they supposed to be a powerful presence in that relationship, and being beaten on by a woman is kind of like something to be laughed at. So I sense that a lot of the guys that I know, they don't like to share that information that they're being abused. So uh, in that aspect, like I said, I think we definitely need to have more conversations as men about this issue, so these guys can feel comfortable enough to go to tell what's going on with them, because a lot of them they hide in silence also. Females hide in silence, but the guys also hide in silence just because they're afraid to come out to be laughed at. So in that aspect, I do think that the guys, when they are victims, it's a little heartening because they take it on the chin and they don't have an outlet to release or get any help because they just fear being laughed at. Uh, as the abuser, I mean, for me, talking to these guys who do want to change, I see is that like it's a cycle. Like they've been groomed and been ingrained with being abused or being abused or seeing abuse in their household. So they think that's like how you're supposed to treat people, how you're supposed to treat their females. So it's disheartening both ways.
Mhm. So how did and both of you stated that you all have not been effectively affected directly by domestic violence. So how did you all um begin to advocate for domestic violence and victims and
Well,
speak?
yeah, for myself, and I'll backtrack just a little bit. But my first experience or introduction to domestic violence came at a very young age, probably around 8 or 9. I was at the barbershop, and guys are sitting in there, watching TV, waiting to get their haircut, getting their haircut, and one of the guys that was in one of the chairs pretty much, said, was looking out of the window, and he had a shock reaction. And he basically said, and I'm going to paraphrase, that's messed up. That's messed up. And everybody kind of turned toward the window, and several other guys were saying the same thing. That's messed up. That's messed up. And everybody kind of ran to either a window or toward the door of the barbershop to look across the street to see what was happening. And just across the street, there was another barbershop just on the other side of the street, and there was a bus stop in front of that barbershop. And at the bus stop, there was a guy that was violently striking what I assumed was his girlfriend. And just to see that, again, this is my first time seeing anything of this. I didn't know that existed. So I'm frozen stiff, seeing that. And there's several of the guys kind of came up and they kind of barked across the street to, try to get him to stop. But while that was happening on the side of the street where we were, just at the barbershop across the street, the same thing was happening. Guys were kind of poured out and they circled the bus stop, and they all were individually telling me they needed to stop there. What's wrong? Which was wrong with you? And the guy that was striking his girlfriend he had some words for some of the other guys, and he and one of the other guys, they got into a fight. And as those two were fighting, 3, 4, maybe 5 of the guys in the barbershop and around the bus stop, they poured in and they all were jumping on the guy that was beating his girlfriend. So there was that right prevails moment, that we all kind of felt. But what was even more shocking to me than seeing him striking his girlfriend was when she, in an all-out panic, she ran to the nearest trash can. She pulled out a bottle. She broke the bottle on the side of the trash can, and she just started swinging it violently at the guys that was coming to her aid. And I had no file for that. Again, I'm 9 years old, and I had no file. So I'm literally shock stiff at seeing a man striking a woman, then seeing that woman defending him more than she defended herself. And I just didn't know how to process that. So it was an instance like that. And real quick, there was another instance where I would say a family member, but it was a friend of the family, a buddy of mine. We grew up all in the same neighborhood. His sister was going through a similar ordeal. And it made all of us have just pretty much a hatred. I know that's a strong word, but we had a hatred for her boyfriend simply because of what he was putting her through. But the other part of that, it was even more jarring than to see and hear about him striking her and to see her face bruised up from time to time. The other thing that was just as jarring as that was whenever we saw them in their moments of public displays of affection, where they would be hugging each other. They would be, hugging each other, taking pictures. He would be hugging her from behind, kissing her on the cheek. And at this time, I'm probably around 14 or 15. And that was just as jarring to me as the other instance. So for that, that kind of disdain for men who can conduct themselves like that, that kind of stayed with me. It stayed with me. And then it's just as I moved on and on into my adult life and beginning to hear more and more how prevalent domestic violence was, that kind of showed me that was a bigger problem than those 2 instances that I experienced growing up. And then just again, getting married and having a family of my own, and just being more obviously, the advent and the introduction of the internet and such, which gives all of us a broader view of what's going on globally, as well as nationally, obviously. Began to become more aware of what's happening, not just in our neighborhoods and our regions, but across the country and even around the world. So, myself, I operate as a playwright and a screenwriter. So my thing at that time, this was probably the early 90s, I wanted to craft something that would lend voice and display not only what domestic violence looked like, but also to show that there is a way out and that there is an escape for that situation. Many people, as Mark stated earlier, many people want to get out of that situation, men and women, and they don't know how. They're trapped in this room and the door is right there. They just don't know where the door is because of the immense darkness. So their escape is literally within arm's reach, but they're not aware of where it is. And sometimes they are so consumed by fear that they would prefer to stay in that little cage than to branch out and face what could happen after that. So, from a artistic perspective and from the area of the performing arts, we wanted to craft and create something that would not only shed light on that, but to further expose it. And we were very fortunate to be able to do that with the production of our first stage play titled Hands Made to Hold. We premiered that in October of 2022, and we brought it back in October of 2023, and it performed and it did exceptionally well amongst the audiences, but not just to have something to kind of operate in the performing arts space, but we also wanted to have that as a tool and as an instrument to serve as a complement to some of the great work that organizations like Sisters for Sisters are doing. Those organizations are the ones that are on the front line. They're what we call the foot soldiers, and things that we do outside of that, is just to complement to what those organizations are doing. But it's also another way and means of helping to get the word out.
my audio was not on. I apologize. So, Mark, can you answer the question as to how you got involved into advocating for domestic violence?
So in 2019, a close friend of mine who was dealing with abuse for, I'm gonna say maybe 3 years prior, she was murdered by her husband. And I was one of the very few people she confided in about her abuse, but I felt kind of handicapped because she didn't want the help. I was just basically there to be a listening ear for her. And maybe we tried to get the help, when we tried to get her the help, she just refused. Every time she refused, she said, I got it. I just want you to listen to me. And when she died, I'm gonna say a day or two after that, I read this quote from Dr. King, and he said the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression, the cruelty of the bad people, but the silence over that by the silence of the good people. And that kind of just it hit home with me, and I felt like my silence was complicit in her death. And like I said, it rocked me to my soul when she died, because I felt that I didn't do enough to help her out that situation. So ever since then, I've been engulfed in domestic violence awareness and prevention, and I we created a Power of Purple Week every October, where we raise awareness to domestic violence in my community, and we honor and support victims and survivors of domestic violence in our community. So every year we do a candlelight vigil for those who's lost their lives for from domestic violence, and we bring their families out, and it's a touching ceremony, just listening to the families of those who've been affected by domestic violence, not just the victims, but the survivors of it also. And you learn so much about domestic violence, just hearing the testimonies of the women and the men that's gone through it. So that kind of like furthered my passion, just hearing those stories. And then once I became involved in it, it seems like you just get all of these stories of domestic violence in the community that it wasn't on my radar before then.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you hear stories of men beating the kids, beating the women, shooting, stabbing. Like I've since I've started this, it's been mind-boggling the many stories that I've heard and came across, or people that have called me for help that's been dealing with domestic violence. So like I said, I just every chance I get, I try to educate myself further just so I can be a resource to someone else.
And let me just say to you, listening was more help than you could ever imagine, because you were able to articulate her story in a way that she can't, because she's no longer here. But you are the voice, you are her voice to her story. So the listening and you being there listening to her was sometimes we negate that our presence
Mhm.
is a help. That sometimes our presence is the best thing that sometimes somebody's looking for. Um, Let me ask you, why do you all think that men, like domestic violence, is routinely portrayed as a gender crime perpetrated by men against women, right? Why do you think that men are overlooked as victims?
Mark, you want to take the lead on that?
I'm still trying to process my.
Yeah. Could you repeat the question again, Tia?
Yep. So domestic abuse is routinely portrayed as a gender crime perpetrated by men against women. So why do you feel that men are often overlooked as victims of domestic abuse or intimate partner violence?
All right. And I'm going to steal from Mark in this regard, because he pretty much answered that question one or two questions ago. But it's the whole male ego, male agenda thing. For in one instance, I'm sure that whoever that gentleman is that's going through it, I can assure you, just like with a woman, I can assure you that he never once in his life thought that he could or even would become a victim. So there's that aspect of something that you are probably 100% certain would never happen, and then all of a sudden it's happening. So there's that aspect of it. And as Mark, pretty much what he did allude to, so very accurately alluded to it, that there is a stigma within, the male culture that I can't tell anybody about this. I can't tell my father. I can't tell my brother. I can't tell my sister. I can't tell anybody. So in that instance, the best way that he looks to handle it and deal with that is by not handling it or dealing with it, and just literally just staying and kind of hoping it goes away. And then there is Mark again. He pretty much nailed it. There's a level of shame that comes with that. How can the thought process is, how can you let a woman do that to you? One, he didn't let her do it to him. She did it. So there's that, and that the man is saying to himself, I wasn't able to stop her from doing this, or I've been trying to get her to stop doing this. This is him self-processing. I'm trying to get her to stop doing it. I moved out. She follows me. All of the things that kind of are attached with that domestic violence. So, but from a man's perspective, a man imprisons himself with the shame and the just the overall guilt of being a man and not being able to protect himself from a woman. And that doesn't necessarily mean the physical aspect of it. The mental and emotional side of it is just as brutal, so whoever is his perpetrator could be literally tearing him down mentally and emotionally to the point where, he doesn't even want to seek help. Because again, how do I tell somebody about this? And this is 2024, so we understand that the LGBT community is not exempt from this. So where you may have, two gentlemen in a relationship, and that's still domestic violence. But in that instance, you have a male that's being abused by a male. So then there's all of those dynamics that would cause the said male to kind of withdraw and pull back in. But it's even more so difficult and traumatic when it's his woman that is the abuser.
So are you saying that masculinity plays a big part, and men don't report it or are overlooked?
A tremendous part of it.
Yeah, I like to add, not to cut you off.
No.
We had a discussion last night with men who've been abused, and this one particular guy, he shared that he actually tried to get the help from police officers, from his family, and they all like kind of shamed him and laughed at him, like, how are you letting this woman beat on you?
Right.
And like, so he was like, after that, he was like, he just went into his shell. He just kept quiet. So if you can't get the help from your family and then law enforcement, like, where do you turn to after that if you can't get the help from those two individuals?
How do we change that?
As Mark stated, the resources are there. He's with an organization and a group that literally have, again, boots on the ground. Organizations like that are there for that cause and that purpose, but there's this chasm between the organizations and those that need the help, need the resources, that is pretty much the problem. As Mark again has stated, and I'm pretty much going to ride shotgun with him for the remainder of the Zoom because he's killing it. But there's just a level of shame and embarrassment that comes with that, to where organizations, like those that we speak of, are willing and able to help. Oftentimes, the victim would prefer not to accept the help or not to even come across it. And then there's this level where he has to reveal what he's going through. He has to share, and then heaven forbid that he's going through this for a period of time, 2 years, 3 years. Then, as Mark stated, then the ridicule is, how did you let someone like that long? Or you've been dealing with that long? And then it makes him even more, at that point, it makes him wish he never said anything, but it makes
Exactly.
him even more reluctant to speak. Yeah, so to your question, how do we, kind of cross that bridge? We got to have organizations like Sisters for Sisters, organizations like those that the organization that Mark is with. We have to, as a community, we have to supply them with the tools and the assistance, to get, because they know how to reach the folks, but this is, it costs money to do these things. If we're being brutally honest, it costs money, and they need the support just as much as the community needs the resources. So the better we can empower and strengthen, what the organizations are doing, the farther that reach can go.
Yeah.
So how do we start, or what can we do to build stronger communities? How do we make our community stronger? Is it by education? Is it?
That
Yeah,
education and collaboration.
Mhm.
Education and collaboration. You'll be surprised how many people don't even know they're being abused.
Mhm.
Like uh it's more different kinds of abuse than physical. You got
Mhm.
emotional abuse, you got financial abuse, you got, I'm saying, it's so many ways to be abused. And a lot of females that I know don't even know they're being abused until it gets to be physical. So I think like educating them on domestic violence and abuse is key. Is really the number one thing to do, because they don't know, and when they do get into it, they don't know the resources that are available to them to help them. I think education, definitely.
Yeah, and our travels, one of the things that I was particularly um, surprised by was the number of victims that are out there.
Yes.
We've had folks to attend our plays and have enjoyed them, but again, you can't look at a person and says he looks like he's going through domestic violence, or
Right.
she looks like it. It doesn't necessarily have a face,
Right.
so you have no idea of knowing who's going through it. But we've had people during intermission and at the end of our plays that have expressed that they have a loved one that's going through it right now. And she would have come with me tonight, but she was afraid to leave the home. These are some of the things that were shared with us. I wish she would have been here tonight. My uncle is going through it again. We don't hear often about the men that are going through, but we were hearing it and being made aware of it, through our little platform that we have. So as Mark stated, it's the educational piece. We play, in this performing arts space, we play a very, very small role, no pun intended, a very, very small role in that. But nevertheless, it's a role where, like Mark stated, a lot of times the subtle signs of domestic abuse are so subtle that the victim's not even aware. How many times can he come home and have a bad day? To where he's raising his voice. He's disrespectful of her efforts to try to take care of him. He's complaining about the food. Why are you wearing that again? All of these are signs, telltale signs of domestic abuse. And again, how many times can he come home and have a bad day? So with the educational piece, as Mark stated, with the educational piece, individuals can be made aware, and they can often find out that, okay, I'm in the very throes of being in a domestic situation. Maybe I need to make a move to try to get out of this now. So when those instances can kind of happen like that, the outcomes are generally positive and good. But again, they have to be made aware that they're in a situation. He may not always raise it. He may have never raised his hand, but he's constantly raising his voice. He may not have ever, struck her, or again, raise his hand, but he's constantly wanting to know where she's going. You know, he may have never shoved her, but he's always asking her, what do you do with the money I gave you? You know, all of those little things, when they start to compile and build up, they start to point toward a direction that said couple is going, that the outcome could very likely not be good. So again, it's just oftentimes it's just a matter of holding up that mirror and letting him or her, said victim, see what it is that they're going through, and then encourage them to, hey, pick up the phone, call somebody. There's people out there. You don't have to stay in this prison that you're in.
So let's talk about the abuser for a quick second. Um, Chris Brown is always out there. He's always in the news, mostly because of what happened with him and Rihanna. My question to you, because for me and what I look for me as a mother of a son, but just looking, and I'm not even going to use that. Let's scratch that. As a person, me just looking at abusers as people with issues, right? Do you think that they can change?
Yeah, I believe everybody and everybody can change given the want.
Mm.
They want to change. I mean, but they have to want to change. Uh, I know for the guys that the guys that I've talked to who were in those situations, uh, some of them have changed for the better. I mean, they saw the outcome, the bad things that they've done, uh, took accountability towards it and changed. But there are also some that are still in that same mindset of I'm the man, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, and so I mean, it's the want. You gotta want to change. I don't, but I believe anybody can change if they want to.
Mm-hmm. And I agree 100%. There was a time when that perpetrator, be it male or female, there was a time when that perpetrator wasn't the perpetrator that they became. You know, somewhere along the line, something triggered, something kicked in, and then the behavior began to manifest. But prior to that moment, they were not who they were. So if they could change and become what they became, they can change again and withdraw from that behavior. But unfortunately, like Mark said, unfortunately, you have some who are convinced that they are not in error with their behavior. They will have a long laundry list of reasons why she made me do this or why he made me do this. And they don't care what Mark, Daryl, Tia, or Carolyn says.
Yeah.
This is his home or her home, and they're going to handle their business the way they see fit. Those individuals, we got a lot of praying to do and a lot of work to do for them. But yes, people can change.
Do you believe, because you said triggered, which was, we can go really deep with triggers. Is that taught? Do you think that it's taught, or do you think that it's mimic? It's a mimic behavior.
I would venture to say both. It's mimic because if he or she, the potential perpetrator, if he or she sees that enough and is disillusioned enough to think that there's nothing wrong with it, then that's going to become applicable to their own lives. So I would say that it's definitely mimicked. And unfortunately, it's also taught. Son, you don't let your woman talk to you like that. You don't see your mama talking to me like that. That's because and then he goes on into how he keeps her from responding like that. So if you sharing that with your son or your daughter, mother say, don't let him talk to you like that. If he says sometimes it's bad examples leading to bad examples. So unfortunately, there are a number of ways where that those habits and that behavior can become absorbed. And after a while, it begins to manifest. And once it manifests, it potentially can be a bigger problem than we thought.
definitely agree wholeheartedly. I think it's both also. I think it's both also because I know some of the victims that I've talked to, they equate love with violence because that's how they grew up.
Mhm.
They saw abusive behavior in the household growing up, so they think that they thought that was how they were supposed to conduct themselves or how they were supposed to be treated in their relationship. So, yeah, I definitely agree.
So if you all, as we're winding down, if you all could talk to your younger self, if you could talk to your younger self, what would you tell your younger self when it comes to domestic violence and abusing women?
Um, I would simply say, and the cookie cutter answer is don't do it. But along with that, I would simply, say and try to use as many um, real life examples of how much domestic violence can affect not just the individual, the victim, it also affects the perpetrator. Because again, it for some reason it somewhat empowers him, so I would use or powers her, whoever the perpetrator is. So I would just use real life examples because unfortunately, all we have to do is turn on the television. All we have to do is just scroll our Facebook feed or our social media feed. All we have to do is just look at the newspaper. It's the information and the awareness is around us 24/7. So I would share with my younger self, hey, this situation happened, that situation happened, and how it impacts, more than just the two that are involved. It can impact it impacts families, it impacts neighborhoods, communities, villages, the whole nine. And it can again, it's the problem itself is nationwide. So I would say, Daryl, would you want to be on either end of these situations? And a wiser, me, and not to say that I wasn't then, but if that is posed to the average young person, the answer would be no. They don't want to be the victim. They don't want to be the perpetrator. So that's what I would kind of share with a younger Daryl Cador, is that this thing is real, and make sure that you carry yourself like you're supposed to, because if not, you could end up being one or the other.
Oh, wow, he just said pretty much what I was going to say, but yeah, I think I would just tell my younger self, uh, I mean, like I said, I never experienced that. I never dealt with domestic violence at no point in my life because I was raised not to hit a woman.
Right.
I was raised to protect the woman. So I mean, the thought of being in that situation, I can't comprehend that
Mhm.
because I always retreated from that situation. Even if I was in situations that was intense with a female, I know how to step back. Okay, let's digress. Let's get some space.
Mhm.
Let's cool off for a second and then go back into whatever issues or arguments that we have. So I know how to not get in those positions. So I would just reinforce what was taught to me by my parents.
Mhm.
Do you all have any upcoming projects or events that you would like to share with the folk?
Well, for ourselves, we just finished the final touches and such on our domestic violence awareness stage play titled Hands Made to Hold. And we were able to connect with some producers at the Tubi network. So we finalized all of that and we got the project to them. So we're just waiting on the green light for we can, start letting, the general public know that, hey, it's available. We're very proud of what we've done because it's pretty much been a yeoman's effort, myself and my wife, Jacqueline, serving as the producers. It's funny because when we launched with this project in '09, we were willing and able to work with any and everybody that was, available. And we found out right away that this is can be a lonely journey, unless you know folks and are connected with the right folks. It took us a while to, grasp that. But once we realized that, hey, we may have to just go ahead and do this on our own, we took that approach. We worked with some producers to bring it in 2023, 2022, and we decided we're going to launch and, bring it back and move it as far as we can on our own. So we're very, very fortunate and grateful to be able to do that earlier this year. So we're excited about how God has positioned us. But along with that, we're excited about some of the other projects that we have as well, because everything that we have speaks to a different issue or a different vice that affects not just our Black and brown communities, but society as a whole. And we're attacking a lot of those issues: absentee fatherhood, family planning, broken homes, wayward children, teen suicide. We're attacking all of those issues by way of the performing arts. And obviously, we're not the first production company to do that, but we feel as though that there's multiple efforts that need to be made in the awareness space. And we've just, brought ourselves and aligned ourselves to be one of those other production companies to want to do that. And we're fortunate to be working in unison with great organizations like Sisters for Sisters. Carolyn has been there for us and with us since day one. And we knew that anything and everything that we do in this space, we want to either ride shotgun with them or they let them ride shotgun with us. So it's been a great organization. It's been a great relationship we've had with them. Carolyn is my sister, and she can't change that, and neither will I. So we are very grateful for the work that she's doing, as well as the work that you, Mark, and your organizations are doing. So again, we're in assistance, with all of the organizations that are on the ground, and we're grateful that God has placed us as such.
How do we get in touch with you?
You guys can reach me on Facebook at Daryl Kador. You can reach me on X at Daryl A. Kador. You can reach me at Instagram at Daryl Kador. And I don't mind sharing my email address either. You can guys reach me via email at dacador@aol.com. That's dacador@aol.com.
Mark?
Yeah, so we on the tail end of our events. Tomorrow, actually, we have a breast cancer domestic violence sneaker ball, which is going to be at Matthew Memorial's Community Center, where we're going to be honoring survivors of breast cancer and domestic violence. Monday, we are doing our purple sipping paint. We're going to be going into the House of Ruth shelter and doing a paint party with some survivors there they have at their residence. The day after that, we're going to be doing our Pamper Me Purple, which we'll be doing spa services for selected survivors in our community. Yes, that's what we have going on.
And how do we get in touch with you?
So you can catch me at Facebook, Mark Williams. I'm on Instagram at Do It For Love. And I don't mind sharing my email also, although it's kind of long. It's Mr. MR_M_S_Williams at hotmail.com.
And I'm sorry. Is it for, you said do it for, is the word for?
The number four.
Okay, yeah.
Gotta do that.
I know. You're right. You're right. You're right.
And it's love, LOVE, LUV.
LOVE. You're right.
Listen, we do things kind of special sometimes. So we
right.
gotta make sure it's correct. I want to thank you all so much for your this intelligent conversation tonight. This was really great and informal, and I pray that someone gain something from it. And if at all, if you need help with your experience, or if you know someone who's experiencing domestic violence, you can reach out to one of these gentlemen on Facebook, Instagram, and the email. If you didn't get the email, you can go back. This will be on the Sister for Sisters Facebook page, as well as Carolyn White Washington's Facebook page. Or you can call the domestic violence hotline, which is 24 hours a 7 days a week at 1-800-799-7233. Or you can text begin to 88788. You guys have been awesome. You are doing such a great work in the DV spectrum, and this is why you guys have been honorees with Sisters for Sisters. And I can't thank you enough for all the work that you all do. My prayer is that God continues to uplift you and strengthen you, fortify you for years to come, and that you all kind of break the ground when it comes to men and domestic violence and educating our community through men, because I believe, I don't know about anybody else, but I believe that it is the men who advocate for domestic violence will be the ones to actually help rid it, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You guys are the leaders and that we need and we seek. We don't have a lot of men that come out and talk about it. So I'm glad that I have two men who are masculine, who are not afraid to share how they feel about intimate partner violence and how it affects our community. I just want to give you guys a round of applause for your work and for what you guys have done. And Carolyn's texting me. So I thank you all so much again for coming on. And hopefully this, and I know this won't be the last time.
Mhm.
Won't be the last time. We'll see you all again, not even next year. I know we'll have another conversation. I know there were some other men. I actually have a brother of mine who's a brother in ministry with me, who's like, who would love to come in and host and talk with you guys on domestic violence. And so I'm looking forward to that conversation if we can make that happen. So thank you so much again for everything, and I bid you all a good night. Good
Thank
night.
you.
God
All
bless
right, thank you. All right,
you. Thank you.
congratulations too, Mark.
You as well. You as well, though.
All right, bye.
All right.